Hello everyone, this is Sir Baez. Today, I will discuss to you the topic Basic Theories as Frameworks in Ethics. The term framework class can be defined as a basic structure underlying a system or concept. Contextually in ethics, it refers to a set of assumptions, concepts, values, and practices that constitutes a way of viewing reality. With this definition, a framework is pretty much like a worldview or a held theory. As a person class, we have our own assumptions. We also have our own way of creating concepts. We have different values, and we also have different practices. Those things, class, reflects on how we view our own reality. So that is framework class. Framework and principles in ethics shows a lot on what we have in mind or our disposition and the way on how we resolve different moral dilemmas that we experience in our life. That is why, class, it is very important for us to learn and understand the basic moral theories that we already held as people. So, ethicists today generally divide the study of morality into three general subject areas. Number one is metaethics. Number two is normative ethics. And lastly, applied ethics. Under these respective areas are various moral theories or frameworks. Let's start with metaethics. Metaethics class is a branch of ethics that studies the nature of morality. As such, it talks about the meaning, reference, and truth values of moral judgments. It also explains what goodness and wickedness mean and how we know about them. Studying the methods for choosing ethical principles and doing normative ethics can be said to be part of this more basic branch of moral philosophy. Because it studies the meaning of ethical language and the metaphysical of moral truths, metaethics deals with questions like the following. First, are those objective moral truths? Second, what do the words good, bad, right, and wrong mean? Third, are moral judgments a matter of subjective personal feeling? Fourth, if we say slavery is wrong, are we just making a claim about our customs, or are we making an objective declaration that is true regardless of what anybody may think? Fifth, how can we know if something is right or wrong? And lastly, how may ethical propositions be supported or defended? Metaethical theories class are commonly classified, first, semantically speaking, as either cognitivist or non-cognitivist. On the other hand, substantially speaking, as either universalist or relativist. And lastly, epistemologically, as empiricist, rationalist, or intuitionist. So first, semantically speaking, class, I will discuss to you cognitivism versus non-cognitivism under metaethics. Cognitivism class states that moral judgments convey propositions, that is, they are truth bearers, or they are either true or false. Most ethical theories are cognitivist as they contend that right and wrong are matters of fact. The most famous forms of cognitive ethics are the moral realism and ethical subjectivism, which I know you're very familiar with. So in cognitivism class, it focuses on facts. It believes that whether the proposition we have is wrong or right, they are simply truth bearers. Meaning, even though it is right or even though it is wrong, they both have truths within themselves. So they are considered facts under cognitivism. On the other hand, in non-cognitivism class, it denies that moral judgments are either true or false. It claims, on the other hand, that ethical sentences do not convey authentic propositions, hence are neither true or false. Meaning class, it simply denies what cognitivism believes. Meaning, it doesn't base its definition of true or false to any propositions or any ethical sentences. Alright? Because those propositions or ethical sentences can neither be true or nor false. Alright? So that's the difference between non-cognitivism and cognitivism. Alright? So just to give you a recap about moral realism and ethical subjectivism as the two famous forms of cognitive ethics, since we're talking about cognitivism versus non-cognitivism, it falls under cognitivism. Alright? Because in moral realism class, it believes about moral facts, whether it is false or true. Alright? On the other hand, in ethical subjectivism class, it holds that the truth or falsity of ethical propositions or sentences are dependent on our own standard. Alright? Alam ko, naalala nyo pa yan. That it is dependent on what we believe is true or correct or wrong or false. So, subjectivism class is obviously contrary to moral realism, alright? Because we identified that ethical subjectivism can never be used to determine the correctness or the wrongness of moral judgments that we jump into as person sa ating buhay. Alright? Next is Universalism versus Relativism. Ito naman class ay substantially speaking. Alright? So, still under meta-ethics. In moral universalism class, it theorizes that moral facts and principles apply to everybody in all places. Sa katunayan, it is also called moral objectivism, kung saan it claims na ang universal ethics class ay meron at nia-apply sa lahat ng tao regardless of their nationality, citizenship, culture, gender, sexual preference, religion, or any other factors. So, it applies to everybody in all places. Ang paniniwala na ang isang behavior class ay mali, ipinapakita din ito na meron itong kasalungat. At yun? Yung tama. Alright? So, kung ang tama para sa isa ay tama din para sa lahat. That is the quality we wanted to highlight here in moral universalism. Alright? Because moral universalism is very much compatible with moral realism. Now, in moral relativism naman, class, it submits that different moral facts and principles apply to different persons or group of individuals. Halimbawa, ang paniniwala ng ilang kultura sa ano ba yung mga batayan ng tama at mali, hindi ipinapakita nito na ito din dapat yung mga pamantayan sa pagtingin ng tama at mali sa ibang kultura. Alright? So, denying a single or objective standard for morality, sinasabi ng moral relativism that all moral norms are equally true and morals are mere preferences. Right? In moral relativism, class, lahat ng kultura, lahat ng paniniwala, even though we admit that it is very different with each other, ay equal yung truthfulness o yung pagiging totoo sa paningin ng moral relativism. Noticeably, it is very much compatible with ethical subjectivism na it is dependent on what we believe. Diba? Sa kultura, we know that we have different culture depending on when and where we are raised. So, kung ano yung kultura na mayroon tayo, even though it is very different to other cultures around the world, we cannot say that our culture is the right one and other people's culture ay yung mali. Because in moral relativism, it is subjective in the fact that we see our culture as equal. Alright? So we have this kind of perception na we are all true and correct depending on what we believe on the basis of culture. Alright? Next will be based on epistemology. So epistemologically speaking, class, we have Empiricism versus Rationalism versus Intuitionism. This is still under meta-ethics. So first will be moral empiricism. Plus, it is a meta-ethical stance which states that moral facts are known through observation and experience. Ang moral empiricism, class, ang teoryang ito, no, epistemologically speaking, it states that knowledge of matters of fact ay nagmula sa ating observation and experience. So, experiences and observation coming from us as a person creates moral facts. Alright? Here in moral empiricism. So, some form of moral empiricism, class, hold that yung mga katotohanan, it is based or it could be aligned with people's opinions or cultural conventions, because as we say that in moral facts here in moral empiricism, it is known through observation and experience. So we as people, we have different observations and different experiences in life. So itong mga moral truths na ito, ano, could be reducible about our opinion or culture, and thus recognizable by our observation that differs to other people. Alright? So, malinaw dito, class, that we talk about facts in moral empiricism, it is known through our observation, ito lang naman kailangan yung tandaan, and experience. So next, moral Rationalism, it contends that facts and principles are knowable or a priori, right? That is, by reason alone without reference to experience. Right? So, unlike in moral empiricism that focuses that moral facts are known through our observation and experience, here in moral rationalism, it is based on our reason alone, alright, without any reference to our own observation and experience. Right? So, dito nakatuon yung pagiging rational natin, that we have what we call priori, or that the facts and the principles na alam natin or maaari nating malaman. Alright? So, as rationalism class, this is still based on epistemology. Sinasabi dito that knowledge o ang kaalaman natin tungkol sa katotohanan o realidad ay nakukuha hindi dahil sa experience. Alright? But mainly, ang moral facts dito sa moral rationalism are known through rational inferential process. O sa Filipino yung ating rational na paghihinuha. Sabihin class, enable for us to create moral facts, we don't need any observations or experiences here in moral rationalism. As long as we have rational inferential process, tulad nga na nabanggit ko sa Filipino, yung rational na paghihinuha o proseso ng rational na paghihinuha, there we are making moral facts already. Alright? So, with reason alone. Alright? Next will be moral intuitionism. It submits class that moral truths are knowable by intuition. That is, by immediate instinctive knowledge without reference to any evidence. Alright? So, ang theory na to class, kiniklaim nito na meron tayong tinatawag na intuitive awareness. Alright? Patungkol sa moralidad. Alright? Or sa morality. And, pinapakita dito yung definition ng pagkakaroon natin ng basis o batayan sa ating mga sariling ethical knowledge. Alright? So, sinasabi dito that yung mga moral values, alright, or moral value of our actions can be known through intuition. Alright? Or even their consequences. Alright? Kahit i-discover man natin o hindi yung kahihinatnan ng magiging kilos natin, by intuition, we know already yung hinahanap nating moral facts. Alright? So, in general form class, it claims that some moral facts can be known without inference. Alright? So, hindi kailangan ng moral intuitionism ng reference o ng kahit na anong ebidensya to support moral facts that we have. Alright? So, hindi ito inferential, unlike sa moral rationalism, wherein we need to have our own inference or inferential or rational inferential process. Here, it doesn't need experience, it doesn't need observation, it doesn't need rational inferential process or reason. Okay? Kailangan lang nito yung instinct natin or yung intuition natin into some moral facts. Alright? So, that will be the difference between these three. Empiricism versus rationalism and versus intuitionism based on epistemology or epistemologically speaking under meta-ethics. So we're done with the first branch of ethics that studies the nature of morality, which is meta-ethics. Now, let's proceed with number 2, Normative Ethics. Normative ethics class is the branch of ethics that studies how man ought to act, morally speaking. As the name suggests, it examines ethical norms, that is, those guidelines about what is right, worthwhile, virtuous, or just. Sa branch na ito, class, ng ethics, it evaluates ano ba yung mga standards for us to determine the rightness and the wrongness of our actions, and for us to determine ano ba yung actions na dapat nilalandas natin. Alright? So, normative ethical theories, class, are generally categorized into three kinds. First, deontological. Second, teleological. And lastly, virtue ethics. So, first class will be deontology. It is an ethical system that bases morality on independent moral rules or duties. So, here, class, the keywords will be rules and duties. Ang salitang deontology, class, nagmula sa salitang Griego na deon, na nangangahulugang duty. Alright? So, ini-imply nito na meron tayong foundational nature as men about our own duties and obligations. In-equate ng sistema na ito, class, that we need to behave morally speaking with adherence o wastong pagsunod doon sa mga duties na meron tayo or doon sa mga moral rules na meron tayo. Alright? So, kapag hindi natin nagawa yung mga moral rules and mga duties natin, okay, in different spheres of life, it means that we fail, morally speaking. Alright? Because the basis of whether we are correct or wrong here in deontology will be based whether we obey our own duties or not. So, meaning, failure sa atin as person, class, here in deontology, yung hindi natin mapagkilos batay sa mga responsibilidad natin or mga moral rules natin, and also yung mga duties natin. Alright? So, it is also called the non-consequentialism. Alright? Kung saan sinasabi ng sistema na yon na ang mga prinsipyo sa loob ng deontology ay obligatory. Alright? So, regardless of the consequences, whether it may produce positive consequence or negative consequence, as long as we follow our duties, because as it mentioned nga, obligatory ito, we are morally correct, alright, based on deontology. Alright, so that's it in deontology. Now will be teleology. Alright, this one, class, refers to moral system that determines the moral value of actions by their outcomes or results. Sa deontology, sinabi ko nga, ito din ay align sa teorya na non-consequentialism, kung saan ang deontology ay hindi nakabatay sa mga consequences based or whether it is positive or negative. Sa teleology naman, class, the moral value of actions ay nakabase, alright, o dinedetermine ang mga moral value of actions sa pamamagitan kung ano ba yung magiging consequence o outcome o resulta ng ating mga moral actions. Alright, so kabaligtaran ng teleology ang deontology in terms of how they see consequences. Right? Ang salitang teleology class ay nagmula sa salitang Griego na telos na nangangahulugang end. Alright? So, saan mo ba nakikita yung consequences? Of course, end of action. Even though kaya mo siyang ma-predict or mabigyan ng intelligent guess. At dito sa teleology class, its exclusive consideration of morality is based on the account of the end result of our actions. Alright? So, nakafocus talaga ang teleology sa resulta ng ating mga actions, sa mga outcome ng ating mga actions. Alright? So, if we call deontology as non-consequentialism, here in teleology, we can call this consequentialism. Alright? Because we are determining, alright, the benefit that we can gain from our actions by looking to the consequences that awaits us. Alright? So next will be virtue ethics. Here, class, as a moral system, sorry, may motor. It places emphasis on developing good habits of character, like kindness and generosity, and avoiding bad character traits or vices such as greed or hatred. Alright? Dito naman, class, sa mga virtue-based ethics, sa mga virtue-based theories, it gives importance to our moral education. Kung na ipinapakita yung ating intelektualidad, kung paano tayo nahubog ng mga kilos natin sa virtues na pamamaraan. Alright? It focuses, class, on the character of the agent, tayo, mga karakter natin bilang tao, about how we act, okay, based on virtue ethics, wherein we show kindness, generosity, and other characteristics that shows virtue, and avoiding yung mga kasulungan ito. Alright? Yung mga bad character traits or vices tulad ng greed or hatred. Alright? So that will be deontology, teleology, and virtue ethics under the second branch of ethics that studies nature of morality, which is normative ethics. So the last will be applied ethics. Applied ethics, class, philosophically examines specific, controversial, and moral issues. Right? Using philosophical methods, applied ethics, class, is an area of concern in ethics that attempts to determine the ethically correct course of action in specific realms of human action. Alright? So, dito, class, sa applied ethics, it mainly examines kung ano ba yung mga controversial moral issues na meron sa ating community. Alright? Remember the term controversial. Right? So later on, I will give examples. For a subject to be considered as applied ethical issue, not only must it be a matter of moral judgment, but also it has to be controversial. Right? Ayan, nilinaw dito. That before we talk about something na pasok yan sa applied ethics, alright? Hindi kailangan na moral judgment lang ang meron dyan. But also, kailangan may kontrobersiya sa loob niyan. That is, there must be considerable groups of people both for and against the issue. At paano ba natin malalaman na may kontrobersiya sa loob ng moral issue na ito? There should be people that fights about that controversial issues and fights against that controversial issue. Okay? So, kailangan merong nagtutungguli ang grupo ng tao whether they're pro to that issue or against to that issue. So, that will make the issue or the moral issue controversial. So, pwede na natin niya mapag-usapan under this branch of ethics, applied ethics. Right? So, Applied ethical issues class nowadays are classified into various subfields. At una na nga riyan ang bioethics. This class concerns ethical issues pertaining to life, biomedical researches, medicines, healthcare, and the medical profession. As such, it deals with controversies like those about surrogate mothering, ay mga pamilyar naman kayo rito, genetic manipulation of fetuses, right? Stem cell research using human embryos in research, in vitro fertilization, abortion, euthanasia, suicide, patient rights, confidentiality of patients' records, physicians' responsibilities, and mandatory medical screening. So, nandito na class, yung lahat ng mga controversial issues na pwedeng mag-fall under sa subfield na ito ng applied ethics na tinatawag nating bioethics. And I know, familiar kayo sa karamihan ng mga nakasulat rito. Next will be environmental ethics. So this is another subfield here in applied ethics, which talks about controversies in ethics. It deals with moral issues concerning nature, ecosystem, and its non-human contents. Alright? This includes issues such as animal rights, animal experimentation, endangered species preservation, pollution control, and sustainable development. Alright? Another one will be business ethics. Here, class, it examines moral principles concerning business environment, which involves issues about corporate practices, policies, business behaviors, and the conducts and relationships of individuals in the organizations. It investigates ethical controversies such as those about the social responsibility of businesses, employee rights, harassment, labor unions or mga union, misleading advertising, job discrimination, and lastly, whistleblowing. Right? Next will be sexual ethics. Here, class, it studies moral issues about sexuality and human sexual behavior. It examines topics like homosexuality, lesbianism, polygamy, premarital sex, marital fidelity, extramarital sex, non-marital procreation, loveless sexual relations, safe sex, and contraceptive use. And lastly, social ethics. It deals with what is right for a society to do and how it should act as a whole. Its focus is on what may be deemed as proper behavior for people as a whole. Some of the issues under this are those about racial discrimination, death penalty, nuclear weapon production, gun control, drug use for fun, and welfare right. So these subfields class under applied ethics, I don't need to explain this further kasi makikita nyo na inisa-isa na yung mga controversial issues, morally speaking, sa ilalim ng mga subfields na ito. So in applied ethics class, it gives highlight to the issues concerning different areas. Alright? Sa business, sa environment, sa sexuals, sa medical o sa bioethics, and of course sa social. And it talks about those things na magpahanggang ngayon ay kontrobersiya pa rin. Alright? Wherein people debate whether it should be accepted or not. Alright? So, pero mapapansin nyo that a lot of these controversies are in negative side or negative aspect of morality. So, may iba lang talaga mga tao, of course, especially dito sa social ethics, yung mga tao na gumagamit halimbawa ng droga for leisure or for fun. Alright? So, those examples will make it very controversial Because in a way, talagang may nagtutunggali ang mga interes ng tao. Alright? So, that would be the subfields of the third branch of ethics that studies the nature of morality, which is applied ethics. So, in this discussion, we discussed the three. First is meta-ethics, second is normative ethics, and lastly, applied ethics. So that concludes my discussion about the topic basic theories as frameworks in ethics. This is Sarba's class. Thank you for listening. Until next discussion. Bye-bye.